So by now, most of you know about Sacha Baron Cohen's new show on Showtime called Who is America? And it premiered just this last Sunday, and it was absolutely outstanding. Bernie Sanders was actually featured in one of the segments, and I won't spoil it for you because it was a great episode. But there is one segment I do want to talk about because it is important, specifically because it does give us insight into just how low Republicans are willing to stoop, and more specifically, how radical the party has become. So what Sacha Baron Cohen's character did here was he got Republicans to agree to an absolutely insane policy idea. Now, I can't show you the clip, but I will give you a summary of it. So basically, he posed as an Israeli anti-terrorist expert who tried to convince right-wing gun advocates to support the idea of arming students instead of teachers. And he wasn't just talking about arming high schoolers, but actual toddlers. So the premise of the segment was to see how many Republicans would support a supposed kindergarten's program where you just straight up arm children as young as 4 years old. And he actually got Philip Van Cleave to create a video where they market guns to toddlers. And he also got the executive director of Gun Owners of America, a gun lobbyist, Larry Pratt, to admit that arming certain gifted children and even toddlers would be a great idea. Now, he also duped other politicians into supporting this idea by making them read a pro-arming toddler message off of a teleprompter, and that includes Trent Lott, Dana Rohrabacher, Joe Wilson, and Joe Walsh. And here's just some of the things he got them to say that I found definitely interesting. Quote, "Our founding fathers did not put an age limit on the Second Amendment." Quote, "In less than a month, a first grader can become a first grenader." Now, they were reading this off of a teleprompter, and they didn't stop to think, maybe this isn't something that I should be vocally advocating for. They read it. Also, toddlers are pure, uncorrupted by fake news or homosexuality. They don't worry if it's politically correct to shoot a mentally deranged gunman. They'll just do it. Again, they read this off of a teleprompter. I don't know if any red flags went up in their mind. You see clearly this guy promoting a gun marketed for a toddler. I mean, it's just craziness. But my favorite here, this is what he got them to say. "Children under 5 also have elevated levels of the pheromone Blink 182 produced by part of the liver known as the Rita Ora. This allows nerve reflexes to travel along the Cardi B neural pathway to the Wiz Khalifa 40% faster, saving time and saving lives." That part was just, it was pure gold. I mean, the level to which Sacha Baron Cohen is able to troll these people, it's God level. Now, the last quote is, "Happy shooting, kids." So understand, he got them to say these crazy things, and the way that he sold them this meeting in the first place was saying that he was going to give them a particular award for being friendly to Israel. It was a Friend of Israel reward, and he presented them with this story about how a 4-year-old in Israel had saved the lives of himself and his peers by shooting a gunman. Now, because of that story, he was trying to convince them that maybe this would be a policy that you should try implementing in America. And regardless if they supported the policy idea or not, they advocated for it by reading off of the teleprompter. It's kind of like that scene in Anchorman where they got him to say, "Go fuck yourselves," by just putting it on the teleprompter.
I'm Veronica Corningstone.
And I'm Ron Burgundy. Go fuck yourself, San Diego.
That's how mindless these people are. And one of the only individuals that wasn't duped by this was Representative Matt Gaetz, who said, look, politicians, we don't usually just advocate for a policy by reading it off of a teleprompter. And then, of course, you know, the scene cut to a bunch of politicians reading it off of a teleprompter. So I think that this is really important because understand that we've been having this ongoing discussion in this country about just how radical the left is with the electoral victory of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and the rise of Bernie Sanders. We're talking about how communism, literal communism, according to some right-wingers, is ascendant in the United States.
This admitted communist that just won the primary in New York, she's a communist.
No. The discussion about radicalism that we should be having is not about the left, it's about the right. If they're willing to go as far as openly advocating for us to arm toddlers, there's something fundamentally radical about this party. If I were reading something off of a teleprompter, I would get maybe only so far to where I stopped and said, look, I'm not going to advocate for this. This is crazy. How can you state happy shooting kids with a straight face and not just stop and say, I'm not going to read this. I don't support these views. You're making me say these things that I'm against, and I'm not going to say it. So is it the case that these Republicans support arming toddlers? I mean, they were duped into saying it. It says a lot about their characters and how radical they really are. Now, Joe Walsh is one of the individuals that was duped, and when somebody asked him on Twitter, kindergartens? Really, man? Joe Walsh responded by tweeting, "What can I say, Bradley? Sacha Baron Cohen got me. Do I believe kindergartners should be armed? Hell no. But it's on me. Sacha fooled me good. Flew me out to DC for some made-up Friend of Israel award. I gotta live with it." And he also said it was my screw-up. Now, again, he got you to read happy shooting kids off of a teleprompter, and he got you to say, within the span of a month, a first grader can become a first grenader. He did more than just fool you. He exposed an underlying radical feeling you have about guns in this country. Republicans believe in gun anarchy. They won't even endorse the idea of universal background checks, which is supported by 97% of the American population. That's how radical they've become. Now, I don't know if they personally feel this radical or personally advocate for gun anarchy, but since it's what their donors, the NRA, Gun Owners of America, want, that's what they're pushing for, effectively, is gun anarchy. So he explained himself a little bit more on CNN, so here's that clip.
He gets people to say stupid things because he lies to them. In my case, he flew me out to Washington, D.C. They knew I was a big supporter of Israel's, and they presented me with this award as one of Israel's greatest friends. Found out later the whole thing was a ruse, and it was a ruse probably just to get me to say some stupid things. After they conducted an interview, they had me read off of a teleprompter talking about some of the innovative products that Israel's invented. And then they had me read about this 4-year-old child in Israel who, when a terrorist entered his classroom, somehow he grabbed the terrorist's gun and held the terrorist at bay. And that was, I guess, an example of how Israel trains and arms preschool kids on how to use firearms. And boy, shouldn't we do that in America. And so I'm reading this, Michael, off of a teleprompter, and I'm thinking to myself, well, this is kind of crazy, but it is Israel, and Israel's strong on defense. We found out the whole thing was made up. There is no TV station. There was no award. And it's pretty clear that Sacha Baron Cohen wanted me to say something pretty crazy about guns, like in America, we ought to arm preschool kids.
Did an alarm go off in your head, Congressman?
Yeah, it did. But again, Michael, it was too late because I was in the middle of this 15-minute thing talking about all the great things Israel does. So the alarm went off, but the alarm really went off about 3 o'clock that next morning when I said, oh, my God, I've been duped. And then we hired an attorney. We looked into it. And we found out pretty quickly that it was this new special on Showtime that he was producing, Sacha was producing, and we found out, as you said, Michael, I wasn't alone. Dick Cheney, Sarah Palin, a bunch of us were duped.
Now, I'm glad that he's taking this, lightly. It's all in good fun. He admits that he was duped, but I think that this is more important than him just duping over Republicans. I don't get how you can be duped into advocating for a policy as radical as arming toddlers. You can't be duped into saying something like that unless you are an idiot. I mean, Philip Cleave marketed guns to children, and if you watched this clip, there was a teddy bear with a pull string that they were marketing towards 12 to 24-month babies. I mean, there's something, again, fundamentally radical about an individual that you can dupe into advocating for arming toddlers. And I think that we need to start having a conversation, a meaningful conversation about right-wing radicals. I don't want to hear from the party that marches with tiki torches about how radical the left has become. The conversation has got to be about right-wing radicalism, because a left-winger who is a democratic socialist is only radical insofar as Republicans have moved the Overton window so far to the right that anything left of center is radical entirely. So they're the radicals, and I think that this clip reveals a lot about their true desires for gun anarchy in America.
Support this podcast by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Humanist Report.